there were a couple good lines from AOC that I wanted to show you, by the way. This is specifically about the most vulnerable amongst us being responsible for all of the economic issues that we're facing.
The ascent of populist movements is telling us that governments have strayed too far from being responsive to the working class. And so populist movements can all have, they are mechanisms of delivery, and it really matters what they deliver. When you have economic stagnation for the working class and GDP is growing, it is an injustice. And one path and one story is, they both frankly need to provide a prescription of why and who is causing this. One direction is we are going to blame this on the vulnerable in society, on immigrants, on people of different gender identities, on a cultural or the educated and an anti-intellectualist movement. That's the stuff that right-wing populist movements are made of. And that, of course, is all done as a distraction from the truth, which is that it is economic elites that are taking the lion's share of growth for themselves and leaving crumbs for the working class. So the alternative to the lie, which is that it is the most vulnerable in society that is doing this, the alternative is a populist movement that tells the truth. A populist movement that says, this is an injustice. You are being screwed over. And that story is not a cultural one, but a class one. And that it is a class one.
Oh, shit, dude. She's right. Let's run that back. Let's run that back.
In society that is doing this. The alternative is a populist movement that tells the truth. A populist movement that says, this is an injustice. You are being screwed over. And that story is not a cultural one, but a class one. And that it is a class one.
That's right. Finally. And we got another one. Persuade the moderates.
Electoral movements. And we have to persuade moderate movements to have an open mind about how we discuss and approach human rights in the region. And that is why I say that our work has to be coalitional. It has to be coalitional. We have to grow our ranks and we have to persuade. And so I say this again because if we go separately, we will lose it all. We will lose it all. And I want to be very clear. I want to be very clear that that is not a negation. That is not a point of negation. It is a point of coalition. And so it means that everyone has something to give here. And that's why I'm proud to be meeting with both Delinque tomorrow and to be here with SPD today, because we cannot let the right win. We just can't.
That was awesome. Here we are talking about what AOC is saying on Venezuela. Let's take a look at what she had to say.
Remark on who Maduro was as a leader. He canceled elections. He was an anti-democratic leader. That doesn't mean that we can kidnap a head of state and engage in acts of war just because the nation is below the equator. And it is not a remark on who Maduro was as a leader. He canceled the.
I mean, he was a leader, canceled elections. He was an anti-democratic leader. That doesn't mean we can kidnap it. I mean, it's a far greater crime. Also, here is friend of the show, David Adler, saying, standing ovation for Rubio in Munich, standing ovation for Netanyahu in Washington. We are ruled by a transatlantic clique of criminals and midwit minions who clap like seals when their white supremacy is laundered in the language of Western values. Sick stuff. And this person goes, you think Rubio is a white supremacist? Yes, dumbass. He literally said he's not Cuban. He said his descendants are Italian and Spanish. So yeah, why do you think he was actually saying that? Huh? Why do you think he was saying that? Don't make me unload. Okay? That's why he was saying that. He was saying that because he's a white supremacist. He was like, oh, I'm not actually Cuban, which is a different type of Mexican. I'm actually different. Here she calls out the Dems. Ooh, I like that. Let's see.
I just was. I was told that I was an enemy of my party, that I was going to be the reason why the right won, that I was going to cause that the entire future of the country was in balance, and that I was the reason why we would lose. And what was hurtful about it was that they were telling
me too. I've heard that many times before. Let's be real.
Me this because of what I believed. I was being told this because of my commitment to trans rights, because of my commitment for Medicare for All, which is seen as radical communist propaganda in the United States, that I believe in workers' rights.
I suspect that my now overuse of the soundboard is going to increase the number of like under 25s in the broadcast by like at least 10 to 20%. And it's going to literally cut out everyone over the age of 35. Right.
In the Democratic Party, we have a broad coalition. And so some of the most conservative members of the Democratic Party, it can be hard. And I had moments, my first reelection, into my first term, I didn't think I was going to run for reelection. I thought I was going to be one term and done because of how painful and challenging it was. I think there's something that we just have to do, especially as an international left, is that all of us, too often there's a lot of minimization of left movements, but all of us, I think, need to swallow some medicine about the moment. I would say, speak in the US context, I think mainstream Democrats have had to swallow some medicine about the fact that their youth and that generationally, particularly on the issue of Palestine, is quite clear about how they feel about this. In the US, there were similar crackdowns on student protests, et cetera. And that there has to be some give on that front with the brutal reality that.
Another clip that got end brokenness, all mad law. AOC was talking about class-based internationalism.
We are all that we have. We will not survive apart. And I know that I've been there. It feels very difficult and challenging when sometimes the people who are diminishing you are the ones that you need. And that goes in all directions, right? We have to learn how to hold conflict and hold together in conflict. And I think it requires acknowledgement. And again, it requires concessions for all of us. It's hard because we have to tell the truth. It's not to say we can't say these things. It's not to say you're not allowed to say these things, God forbid. But it is to say that we need to be able to be very angry at each other and also know what the real enemy is.
AOC slams Rubio's pro-West speech and calls for class-based internationalism instead.
Even in places like Munich, Marco Rubio's speech was a pure appeal to Western culture. My favorite part was when he said that American cowboys came from Spain.
I thought they came from Winnetou, but
I believe the Mexicans and descendants of African enslaved peoples would like to have a word on that. But I think it's also important to note how thin that foundation is. Culture is changing. Culture always changed. Culture for the entire history of human civilization has been a fluid, evolving thing that is a response to the conditions that we live in. And so they want to take this mantle of culture. At the end of the day, though, it is very thin. And so the response that we have to have is, again, it's material, it's class-based, it's common interest. There was certainly more openness to what I was saying than probably there would be in years past. We can't underestimate the appeal of going back to these well-worn grooves. A lot of what we talk about when we talk about a class-based internationalist perspective also means ending the hypocrisy towards the global South.
I have no idea what she's talking about, and neither does she. I love that these guys are so stupid to understand what she's saying, but then they assume that the person speaking is just as stupid as they are. What does what does class-based internationalism mean? Class-based internationalism is a political concept often from socialist or Marxist traditions that emphasizes solidarity and cooperation among working classes and oppressed groups across borders, prioritizing class interests over national, ethnic, and geographic alliances. In AOC's context, it critiques the pro-West policies that advocates for global unity against exploitation. Wow, this guy understood it and said, thanks for the explanation. Oh, no, never mind. He said, often from socialist or Marxist traditions, they must be stopped in the election if we want the U.S. to continue to thrive for future generations, and that includes immigrants.